Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little reckless. You're going to fall asleep and wake up about 700 years ago. No phones, no plumbing, no antibiotics, no idea what's going on. You're in the Middle Ages, baby. You don't know the language. You don't have the right shoes. You probably smell weird to them. And you definitely forgot to pack your tetanus shot. Let's be honest, statistically, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up with a start, cold, confused, and strangely damp. Something just sneezed on your foot. Not someone. Something. You lift your head off what you hope was a straw pillow, only to realize it was just a burlap sack stuffed with hay. Or fleas. Definitely hay and fleas. The room is dark, lit only by a shaft of pale dawn light slashing through a hole in the thatched ceiling. The air smells like wet wood manure and boiled cabbage. You're lying on a pallet near the fire, more a pile of ashes and smoldering regret than actual flame, and beside you, a snoring pig. Yep, an actual pig. It's wearing some sort of decorative harness. You might be hallucinating. You hope you're hallucinating. The room isn't big. You can count 6 human-ish shapes curled up under matted wool blankets, none of which smell like they've seen a wash basin this season. Chickens roam freely across the floor, pecking around the embers. A toddler stands in the corner, peeing into a cracked bowl like it's just another Tuesday. Welcome to the average 14th century peasant cottage, 1 room, 1 bed, sort of, and 0 privacy. Now here's the kicker. This was normal. For most people, this kind of shared animal-adjacent sleeping arrangement was the default. Historians still argue whether the whole bringing your livestock indoors thing was for warmth or security, or just a way to keep Uncle Wulfric from stealing eggs again. Either way, you've got a front row seat or floor spot. Someone groans. It's a woman, maybe in her late 30s, but looking about 60. She mutters something that might be English, or might be curses. She sits up and starts shaking the kids awake. One of them farts audibly. No one reacts. Business as usual. You try to sit up, but immediately realize your back is killing you. The floor is made of packed dirt, uneven and pockmarked. No mattress, no insulation, no mercy. There's a clay jug of water nearby, but judging by the greenish hue, you're not sure it's for drinking. Maybe just for staring at until thirst wins. You scramble to your feet, bare cold and mud-caked. Someone hands you a tunic that smells like goat. It doesn't fit and itches like someone sewed it out of regret and thistles. But hey, now you're clothed. Kind of. Let's zoom out for a second. You are somewhere in rural England, possibly France. Definitely not ready. It's the 1300s, centuries before electricity, democracy, or TikTok. You're inside what historians call a cruck frame house. Think wooden A-frame cottage with wattle and daub walls, sticks and mud basically. And a roof that leaks if you even think about rain. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof where the smoke theoretically escapes, but mostly just gives everyone early lung disease. A sleepy boy starts poking the coals, muttering a prayer as he adds fresh peat. Peat is decomposed plant matter. It burns. Barely. It also smells like if soil had body odor. Your stomach growls. The woman who handed you the tunic ladles something into a wooden bowl thin porridge. It's gray. Not metaphorically, literally gray. And she stirs it with the same spoon that the toddler probably licked last night. The family sits around the fire pit, each person dipping their chunk of black bread into the porridge. They make the sign of the cross before eating, murmuring to saints you've never heard of. You copy them badly. The father eyes you suspiciously. You try to smile. Mistake. Now they think you're possessed. Great. One kid offers you a bit of turnip. You nod gratefully. It's raw. It's bitter. It's your best meal option right now. Fun fact, medieval people mostly ate what they grew or could trade locally. No sugar, no chocolate, no tomatoes. Potatoes wouldn't even exist in Europe for another 200 years. Bread pottage, a sort of slow-cooked stew, and whatever vegetables didn't rot in storage were your diet staples. Meat, maybe on holidays. Maybe. Unless you count pig's ear as meat. And don't ask about the water. Just don't. You're safer sipping the weak ale they're all drinking for breakfast. Yes, even the children. Why? Because the alcohol killed some bacteria. Tiny, tipsy toddlers, just another day in the medieval neighborhood. Outside, you hear a rooster crowing like it owns the universe. Someone yells "Hoy" and a dog starts barking. Daylight grows stronger, slicing shadows across the floor. Time to get moving. Your host shoves a crude wooden bucket into your arms and gestures toward the door. No explanation, just bucket. You assume this means go get water. You step outside and nearly slip in something unspeakable. Welcome to your new backyard. A muddy yard with a leaning outhouse, maybe 3 chickens, 2 goats, and a view of endless thatched roofs and smoke spirals. It's beautiful in a soggy, desperate kind of way. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rings calling the villagers to something. Maybe work, maybe prayer, maybe both. You shiver. The wind bites through your tunic and your toes are already numb. You're starting to realize something critical about this adventure. Surviving a single morning might be your biggest achievement yet. And you haven't even figured out where to go to the bathroom. You clutch the bucket like it's a shield and trudge toward the well, if you can call a muddy hole with a crank a well. It's not far, but the path there is a minefield of manure goose droppings and whatever the neighbors tossed out after last night's supper. Your bare feet squelch in the sludge, and you silently mourn your lost sneakers. You pass a few villagers already up and about. No one greets you. A couple glance your way suspicious. One woman clutches her child tighter. You suddenly realize to them you are the weirdo. You're unshaven in the wrong way, your clothes are borrowed, and you keep blinking like someone just hit you with a theology book. A boy walks past, carrying a large wooden rake. He's barefoot too and humming a chant in Latin or something, trying its best to sound like Latin. You try to smile. He spits in the mud and keeps walking. You decide not to take it personally. You reach the well, more a muddy depression, with a stone base and a wooden beam across the top. A frayed rope dangles a small bucket, which you lower carefully. The rope creaks and groans like it's seen too many winters. You haul it up heavy with brown-tinged water. A few mosquito larvae do a little dance inside. You sigh and dump the water into your bucket. It's not clean, but it's water. In medieval terms, that's practically a blessing. And here comes your second task of the day, slopping it all the way back without spilling too much, slipping in dung or getting yelled at for being slow. Back at the cottage, the water is poured into a large clay basin and used to rinse dishes or feet, you're not entirely sure which. One of the younger kids is already smashing oats with a rock, while the father sharpens a small sickle on a whetstone that has centuries of regret written all over it. And now it's chore time. You're handed a second bucket, this one empty and suspiciously stained. The woman points to the barn and then to the pigs. You connect the dots, slop run. You shuffle to the barn, which smells like ammonia, wet fur, and despair. There's no clean way to do this job, only less messy ways. The pigs squeal excitedly as you approach. One headbutts the bucket before you can dump it. You try not to scream. Medieval pigs are built different, chunkier, meaner, possibly smarter than you in this moment. By now, your tunic is splattered with mystery fluids, your arms ache, and it's still not even mid-morning. Medieval life doesn't have a snooze button, and don't even ask about hygiene. There's a wooden scoop by the doorway you think is for hand washing, but everyone just wipes their hands on their tunics anyway. A bar of lye soap sits on a ledge cracking in the cold. You decide to brave it. The moment it touches your skin, you regret everything. It burns like a medieval breakup. Historians still argue whether peasants truly lived in constant filth, or if that's a myth exaggerated by later chroniclers. But from where you're standing ankle deep in mud with a pig nudging your shin, it's not looking great. You glance back at the cottage, and for the first time notice the roof is patchy in places. Tufts of moss have formed little green islands. A child climbs up to fix a hole with straw and mud, totally unsupervised. You want to yell OSHA violation, but remember OSHA hasn't been invented yet. Neither has the concept of childhood. Most kids here are considered small adults by the age of 7. They're expected to work clean, carry sew, or get married before their voice even changes. You spot a girl, maybe 10 years old, repairing a fishing net while humming a hymn. You try not to think about what her future holds. Suddenly, a loud clang rings out across the village. A bell. Not the church one, this one's mounted outside the manor house. Everyone stiffens. You look around, bucket in hand. A teen boy runs past yelling something that sounds like glebe time. You assume this means more work, but don't know what kind. You follow the small crowd forming near the edge of the fields. Turns out today is a boon day. The local lord has called for all able-bodied villagers to help harvest hay on his land. This is compulsory. You don't get paid. You just go. You're handed a scythe that's been resharpened so many times it looks like a cheese knife. Someone shows you how to hold it, then gestures vaguely at the field, like go. The grass is wet. Your hands are already blistered. This is going to be great. Hours pass. You swing sweat and sneeze as the pollen hits. Your shoulders burn. Your arms shake. Someone offers you a sip of weak ale from a leather flask. It's warm. You accept it like it's nectar from the gods. No one speaks much. There's a rhythm to it, cut, pull, stack, repeat. At one point, you pause to wipe your face and catch an older man staring at you. He frowns and says something about lazy bones. You nod solemnly. It's probably true. Fun fact, most peasants owed several days of unpaid labor each year to the local lord in exchange for their small patch of land. This was called corvée labor. It's as fun as it sounds. Around midday, the woman from your host family appears with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Lunch. Inside, more bread, a bit of onion, and something pickled. You eat all of it in 3 bites. You offer to help her carry the bundle back. She grunts, which you take as yes. As you return towards the cottage, the smell of manure is less offensive. You're getting used to it. And that's perhaps the scariest realization of the day. You've worked, you've sweat, you've slopped pigs and spilled water and maybe gotten ringworm. Congratulations. You are now officially a functional member of medieval society. For now, you don't so much eat breakfast as survive it. The family's already at the hearth, quietly chewing, with the intensity of people who don't take food for granted. A wooden trencher think plate, but less useful, sits in the center with leftover porridge scraped in. It's lukewarm, lumpy, and grayish-green like oatmeal with a grudge. You get your own hunk of bread hard enough to double as a weapon. You dip it cautiously. It softens slightly, just enough to keep your teeth. The taste sour. Fermented. Maybe earthy if you're feeling generous. Definitely not gluten-free. Here's a wild detail. The bread is dark, dense, and full of chaff, bits of husk and straw that weren't sifted out. It crunches. In places, it crackles. Why? Because flour was expensive and time-consuming to refine. And the miller probably skimming a little on the side. Historians still argue whether these bread adulterations were accidental or an open secret. Either way, you now have a splinter in your molar. You glance around and notice something odd everyone's drinking. Not juice, not water. Weak ale. Yes, even the 6-year-old. Turns out water is basically poison in medieval towns, unless you boil it or lace it with alcohol. So you sip too. It's warm, faintly sour, and makes your lips tingle. Congratulations. It's not even 9 a.m., and you're tipsy. A joke floats to mind. How medieval are you? Well, I had beer for breakfast and peed in a bucket. No one laughs, of course. You keep that one to yourself. The host father is grumbling again. Words like tithe and rent keep surfacing, along with dramatic sighs and skyward glares. The others nod solemnly, chewing. Apparently, today's the day taxes are due. In grain eggs and labor. You stare at your bowl. You're half a bowl of porridge away from being someone's tax payment. The youngest kid offers you something mysterious wrapped in linen. You unwrap it, cheese. Soft, pungent, slightly blue. You sniff, then bite. It's intense. Like butter and mushrooms had an argument in your mouth. You nod, thanks, chewing with effort. This is likely bog butter, a preserved dairy product aged underground for months or even years. Fringe fact, some of this stuff has been found preserved in peat bogs over 2,000 years old. You pray this one's not vintage. Mid-meal, there's a knock. Well, more of a rap on the wooden shutter. A lanky man in a faded tunic pokes his head in. Everyone tenses. It's the Reeve, basically the village tattletale/middle manager. He announces that a cart is stuck in the road and they need hands. Your host groans and gestures at you. You follow them outside, still chewing. The road is less road and more swamp with intentions. A wooden cart sits sunken halfway in wheels, spinning helplessly. Inside, sacks of barley, a broken jug, and a very irritated chicken. You're handed a rope. Everyone pushes, pulls, curses, and sweats until with a horrible slurp, the wheel breaks free and sprays mud across your face. You don't even blink anymore. By the time you trudge back to the cottage, your legs ache. Your stomach's queasy from that questionable cheese, and your nose is running, but not from a cold. Just the sheer intensity of medieval smells. Smoke, sweat, damp, straw, old meat, and that one guy who smells like boiled feet. Inside, the fire's been stoked again. The woman is sweeping with a bundle of twigs. You catch a glimpse of something crawling on the wall. Possibly a beetle. Possibly a demon. It scuttles away. You sit, wipe your brow, and attempt to remove one shoe more a flap of leather with string. It peels off with a squelch. Your sock is wet. You are 90% compost. As you sit there, still reeling from the food, the mud, and the medievalness of it all. A tiny thought flickers in the back of your mind. People did this every single day. No breaks, no weekends, no Wi-Fi. Just mud porridge and maybe a boiled cabbage for excitement. Yet, there's rhythm here. Ritual. Predictability. The family works together, eats together, sleeps together, literally in the same room. No one is chasing likes. No one's doom scrolling. They just exist fully present in the mud, in the moment, and in the smell. You close your eyes briefly. Your stomach growls. Your back screams. Your feet itch. And still somehow you feel a weird, creeping calm. Then the pig farts again. You're still recovering from the breakfast experience when someone tosses a bundle of clothes at you. Not folded, not clean, just bundled. You fumble it open and stare at a mess of wool, linen, leather laces and... Wait, is that a dead mouse? No. Just a tuft of something unnameable. Good start. Your host gestures, making a motion like tying something around their waist, and points to the door. You are to get properly dressed. Because apparently wearing only an itchy tunic puts you somewhere between scandalous outsider and confused vagrant. So you head around the back of the cottage for some semblance of privacy, which consists of squatting behind a haystack while a goose watches you with judgmental intensity. First layer, a linen shirt. It smells faintly of smoke and cheese. It's long, thin, and seems like the only breathable thing you've touched all day. Then come the Bray's medieval underwear. They're baggy white and resemble a cloth diaper crossed with sad shorts. You tie them up with twine. There's no elastic here, just knots and hope. Next up, hose. Not pants. No, that would be too simple. These are two separate leg tubes. One for each leg. They're like woolen leggings held up with ties attached to your belt, or to each other in ways that would stump a modern IKEA diagram. You wrestle one on hop to keep your balance fall over and frighten the goose. Medieval dignity. Chiro. Then the tunic. It's thick, scratchy, and dyed a sort of dirty mustard color. The neck hole is too small, but you force it over your head. It cinches around your chest and the sleeves are uneven. You look like you lost a fight with a curtain. You grab the belt, a long strip of leather or hemp, and loop it around your waist, wrapping it twice before tying it in a loose knot. You try to do the medieval sword at your side pose for fun, then realize you're just holding a wooden spoon and a confused face. Shoes come last. They're more like hide wraps than actual footwear. Thin, flexible leather with rawhide laces. Your toes complain immediately. You can feel every pebble through the sole and they're damp. Of course. At this point you look almost local. Sort of. You probably still walk wrong, blink too often, and don't smell like boiled onions yet, but you're making progress. As you step out onto the road again, you get your first real look at what people around you are wearing, and it's surprisingly uniform. Earth tones everywhere. Brown, gray, dull green. Color was expensive. Bright dyes required rare ingredients, madder root for red woad for blue and saffron for yellow. Only wealthier folks could afford those luxuries. You're blending in just fine. But don't be fooled. Even among peasants, there's status in the details. A cleaner cloak, a newer belt buckle, or a fancy wool cap that's medieval flexing. Historians still argue whether peasants truly cared about fashion or just made do with whatever was functional. But people are people. Someone somewhere definitely spent hours sewing a decorative stitch into a hem just to feel special. You pass an older man with a wide-brimmed felt hat and a long patched cloak. He nods at you. You nod back. Communication achieved. As you walk farther into the village, you spot a young woman adjusting her coif, a linen head covering that keeps hair out of the way and lice in check. Behind her, a teenage boy tries to adjust his chausses, hopping like a medieval flamingo. Then you spot a child chasing a chicken while wearing nothing but a shirt and one sock. So you know standards vary. You pass the local blacksmith hammering away in a leather apron and soot-covered tunic. He's shirtless, underneath sweating muscular, definitely the village thirst trap. His hammer rings against iron as sparks fly. You try not to stare. He scowls anyway. In the distance, a group of women gather near the bakehouse, sleeves rolled up, arms dusted in flour. They chatter while kneading dough and slapping each other's wrists with wooden paddles for laughs. One notices you, raises a brow at your mismatched hose and snorts. Welcome to the Social Olympics. You're in last place. But hey, at least you're no longer naked and you didn't tie your belt backwards like that guy did last week. Progress. A man walks past in a fur-lined surcoat. You pause. Fur. That's fancy. He must be a merchant or reeve. Maybe both. He carries himself like someone who's had meat this week. You also spot the local priest strolling down the lane. Black robes, sandals, thin, pale, tired. Basically the medieval Goth. He's muttering to himself in Latin and waving a small wooden cross at a pig. Business as usual. A sudden breeze kicks up and you realize layers matter. You might be itchy, sweaty, and slightly bound at the knees, but you're also warm. These clothes are designed to trap heat wick moisture badly and keep you vaguely dry. You tug the belt tighter and adjust your tunic hem, trying to look natural. You fail, but no one throws vegetables at you, so that's a win. In the end, medieval fashion is less about looking good and more about surviving. Every scrap of cloth is reused, repurposed, and resewn. Buttons are rare. Pockets don't exist. You carry everything in pouches or tie it to your belt like a utility barbarian. You feel oddly proud. You got dressed. You did it. And you only insulted one goose in the process. You're officially medieval head to toe. You step into the village square, or what passes for one. It's more of a well-trampled clearing between cottages where chickens strut like they own the place and pigs waddle freely in search of dropped crusts. A low stone cross stands at the center, weathered by time, stained with moss, and flanked by a couple of wobbling benches. People drift in like clockwork women with baskets, old men leaning on staves barefoot, children playing tag with sticks, and wildly unrealistic sound effects. You sit on a stump, trying to blend in. A gaggle of women nearby are already deep in gossip. They don't whisper, they announce. You catch words like witch rain, missing goose, and Merthin's rash. It's all very high stakes and low detail. Suddenly, one woman points at the sky and mutters, "Red dawn. Bad omen." Everyone nods grimly. The sky, by the way, is cloudy and sort of beige. You squint. Historians still argue whether these kinds of folk omens were genuinely believed or just convenient conversation fillers. But no one's laughing. This Red Dawn business dead serious. Then comes the daily religious moment. A man with a wooden clacker limps around the square, chanting something about repentance and purgatory. The villagers pause. Some mumble a few prayers. Others cross themselves. You do your best imitation of solemn piety, trying not to look like you're reciting the theme to friends in your head. You wander to the edge of the square, where a small wooden board hangs on the side of a post, basically the village news feed. A few faded scraps of parchment are tacked there, something about tithes being due, a warning about wolves again, and a drawing of a very unhappy-looking man. You guess that's either a wanted notice or medieval meme art. Hard to tell. A lanky boy sidles up beside you and says something in a dialect you don't quite follow. It ends in hellfire, and he giggles. You laugh nervously. He hands you a lump of something wrapped in leaves. It's sticky. It smells faintly of honey and something burnt. You thank him. He runs off. You realize too late it's probably bee bread fermented pollen paste eaten for strength. It tastes like damp granola and regret. You pass a thatched shop with a painted sign showing a fish and a loaf. A woman inside is arranging dried herbs on a shelf. Not apothecary, not quite grocer. More like whatever's available. You point to a jar. She shakes her head. For fever, she says. You nod solemnly. You have no money anyway. Speaking of which, let's talk coin. You don't have any, and even if you did, it wouldn't help much. Most village exchanges are bartered eggs for thread cheese for nails, labor for bread. Actual currency only circulates in towns or among the elite. A single silver penny could buy a chicken, or possibly a whole day's worth of trouble if you flash it around. You wander back toward the gossiping cluster. Now they're whispering about Margaret's new headscarf. Apparently it's dyed with woad, and someone saw her talking to a man from 3 villages over. The implications are scandalous. You realize something else as you sit there. The village revolves around 2 things, God and talk. Religion is the cosmic glue, and gossip is the social scaffolding. If you're not in church, you're at the market. If you're not at the market, you're at the well. And at all of them, you're listening, speaking, confessing, complaining, judging, or repenting. A teenage boy with a freshly shaved tonsure walks past. He's a novice monk, probably visiting from a nearby monastery. His robe is too big. He trips slightly on the hem and pretends he didn't. Behind him, a woman gives you a look and says, "That one's mum still thinks he's gonna be pope." Everyone laughs. Another man joins the group and starts ranting about an evil eye someone cast on his sheep. He swears they stopped blinking normally. People nod. One woman fingers a wooden rosary. Another spits over her shoulder. You try to follow the logic. There is none. But here's the historical nugget: belief in curses, omens, and charms was deeply embedded. You didn't separate religion from daily life, they were the same thing. Prayers were said before planting. Saints were invoked for toothaches. The devil was blamed for missing tools. And garlic, oh garlic, was practically a magical artifact. Suddenly a small bell rings. A man with a booming voice announces the arrival of the priest at the far end of the square. Everyone hushes. You stand instinctively. The priest is flanked by 2 altar boys, one swinging a censer, the other struggling to keep a candle upright. He walks to the stone cross and offers a quick blessing. People cross themselves again. Then he announces the next feast day, St. Swithin's Day, and warns everyone to be extra pious or else the rains will ruin the barley. You blink. Rain again. You look up. Still beige sky. As the priest walks off, the square bursts back into low buzz. And then someone grabs your arm gently but firmly. It's the older woman from your host family. She mutters something about Father Dunstan and lentils, then hands you a basket. Errand time. You're officially part of the morning circuit now. You pass back through the square, nodding at faces you're starting to recognize. A man sharpening blades. A girl chasing geese with a stick. An old woman mumbling to a wooden doll. Your village. Your odd, smoky, suspiciously aromatic village. And it hits you, the Middle Ages isn't all darkness and plague. Sometimes it's a sunny square, a basket of lentils, and a whisper about Margaret's woad-dyed scarf. The path to the manor is well worn, but intimidating. It curves up a slight hill lined with hedges and flanked by wide fields of wheat and barley, all owned technically by one man, the lord of the manor. You've heard murmurs about him all morning. People speak his name in the same tone you'd use for an unpredictable boss, or a dragon who might also own your lease. You adjust your tunic grip, the basket tighter, and follow your host's teen son, who was sent with you, just in case you bow wrong, which frankly seems like something you would do. The manor house emerges through the trees, a timber-framed structure larger and better built than anything else you've seen so far. Its walls are daubed white, its roof tiled instead of thatched, and there's even a little stone dovecote beside it. Real birds, clean, silent garden. You're not in pig-poop peasant land anymore. You cross through a wooden gate where a guard, yes, an actual guard, eyes you with the weary expression of someone who has seen 1,000 clumsy baskets of lentils and expects this to be no different. He lets you through after a grunt. The manor's small courtyard bustles. Servants sweep dogs, bark a boy in fine hose chases a cat with a stick, and somewhere in the distance a goat screams existentially. You pause at the main door. Your guide bows, deeply. You follow suit, too deep. You lose balance. Your basket tips and a single lentil rolls out in tragic slow motion. Your guide hisses something that's probably medieval for "stop embarrassing me." Eventually, a steward appears, a thin man in a tidy cap, who always looks like he's sucking on a lemon. He takes the basket without a word and waves you away. That's it. Your first brush with nobility, and not even a thanks. Rude. But the steward beckons again, not to chat, to put you to work. You're brought to the outer edge of the estate, where laborers are preparing hay bales. This is where it gets real. Medieval society is all about hierarchy. Peasants like you are tied to the land. You don't own anything. You're allowed to live and work here in exchange for rent taxes and labor. That might mean plowing, threshing, or like today, hauling hay for a noble who wouldn't even notice if you vanished. You help stack bales, pass buckets, and sweep straw. A noblewoman passes nearby in a gown the color of crushed violets, her sleeves trailing like fabric waterfalls. She doesn't look at you. You stare anyway, just long enough to trip over a pitchfork and almost impale yourself. Classic. Eventually, you're dismissed, which is a fancy way of saying no one needs you and you're standing in the way. You wipe your hands on your tunic and try not to inhale any more hay dust. Your guide tells you it's time to head back, but you pause at the edge of the courtyard to observe the manor's garden rows of medicinal herbs, flowers, and vegetables arranged with shocking precision. This is not survival gardening. This is I have serfs gardening. Historians still argue whether most lords took an active role in managing their manors, or just let stewards do the dirty work while they hunted boar and married cousins. Judging by the absence of any grand lordly presence, you're guessing the latter. As you walk back through the village with your companion, people glance your way with mild interest. You've now officially visited the big house, and that makes you just a little more interesting or suspicious. You reach the family cottage in time for a midday break. The kids have started a game that involves a stick, a cloth ball, and a lot of shouting. You sit by the fire pit, legs sore, mouth dry, and brain fried. The father offers you a sliver of something dried and salted. Meat, probably. You chew. It's tough, smoky, and could easily be tree bark. You don't care. The conversation drifts toward the manor. One of the older kids sighs dramatically and says he's going to run away and marry a baker's daughter in York. His mother snorts. The others laugh. No one says that's impossible, just unlikely. The truth is, most people never leave their village. Travel is rare, dangerous, and expensive. The manor is your universe. The Lord is your son. And you're just trying not to get burned. Suddenly, the air shifts. A sound clattering hooves. Everyone pauses. Down the lane comes a rider cloaked in dark green with a crest on his shoulder. A herald. Everyone scrambles. Women cover their heads, men bow, kids scatter. You follow suit. He posts a notice, barks something about royal taxes, then rides off without a second glance. You don't know what he said, but it probably means more work. Back inside, the mood is grim. The adults begin muttering about how to pay. More grain, more eggs. The family doesn't have coin. Few do. Maybe they'll have to send the daughter to help with harvest at another estate. She frowns, but doesn't argue. Everyone sacrifices, even the ones too young to vote or spell votes. You sit back listening. You're not just surviving now. You're starting to understand. The manor isn't just a place. It's a system, a machine. You give your time, your labor, your best chicken, and maybe you get to keep a roof over your head. You sigh. You're sore, itchy, slightly sunburned, and 90% sure you're developing a hay allergy. But hey, you bowed to the right people. You didn't insult the steward. And you kept the lentils mostly in the basket. That's a win. The road into the village market is alive with motion. You follow a string of carts and villagers, each carrying bundles, baskets, or squealing pigs on rope leads. It's market day, and for once, everyone's excited. The atmosphere shifts the moment you pass the wooden marker at the edge of town. It's like walking into a medieval carnival if carnivals were somehow louder, smellier, and also more terrifying. Bright fabrics flap from makeshift booths. Spices swirl through the air, cinnamon, cumin, cloves, and mix with the more earthy notes of dung sweat and fish that's seen better days. You sidestep a puddle of something unidentifiable and nearly bump into a man selling miracle bread shaped like saints. His claim, eat one and you'll never suffer boils again. The jury's out, but honestly, you're tempted. You wander among stalls piled with onions, turnips, slightly wrinkled apples, and something that might be a hedgehog wrapped in cabbage leaves. Prices are shouted in thick dialects. Chickens squawk in crates. A boy offers to shine your shoes, then notices you're barefoot and scampers off. This isn't just shopping, it's social glue. Villagers from all around the area come here to trade gossip, show off, and occasionally duel over the proper price of barley. You hear snippets of conversation. The Lord's son was seen with a brewer's daughter. Someone thinks they saw a werewolf, and there's a traveling friar claiming to have a tooth from St. John's camel. Spoiler, camels didn't make it this far. Historians still argue whether medieval folk genuinely believed such relics or just played along because hope was in short supply. You're drawn to the spice booth. The merchant cloaked in a patchwork robe and too many rings gives you a knowing look. He leans in and whispers, "Real pepper, straight from India." You blink. In this century, pepper is nearly worth its weight in gold. You manage a polite smile and back away before your pockets get searched. Then you spot him, a juggler perched atop a barrel, doing a one-handed handstand while balancing a dagger on his nose. His name, someone mutters, is Jeff. Just Jeff. He flips Land's bows and immediately starts pestering the crowd for pennies. "A penny for the kingdom's best performer," he shouts. Or a slap if you're broke. You give him a sliver of dried fruit from your pocket. He gasps theatrically, bows again, and hurls an orange into the air. It lands miraculously back in his palm. Applause. A goat bleats approvingly. The market has its own rhythm. Not just selling, but performance. Some booths sing, some cheat. One man sells frogs trained for war. You watch him poke a toad with a stick and declare it enraged. It hops. The crowd cheers. You stop at a fabric stall. The merchant runs a bolt of rough linen through her hands, eyeing your tunic. Bit tight in the shoulders, she notes. "Want me to let it out?" You shake your head. You're lucky to be clothed at all. A woman hawks herbs. You ask her about the sharp-smelling one that looks like dried grass. "Wormwood," she says. "Good for stomachs. Bad for demons." You buy a pinch with a borrowed coin. You don't know what it does, but it feels like progress. And then, the crowd parts. A wagon rolls in, its wooden panels painted with chipped images of stars, angels, and what might be a turtle in a hat. The banner reads, "The True Wonders of the Known World." You freeze. This is either going to be incredible or deeply scarring. A man climbs out, dressed like a faded bishop, crossed with a circus clown. "Ladies and gentlefolk," he cries, "feast your eyes on a fish that sings a two-headed duck and the severed hand of a Viking berserker that still twitches when insulted." People edge closer. You do too, because what else are you doing today? Inside the wagon, you see jars of cloudy liquid stuffed animals, a shriveled foot, maybe human, and something that might be a taxidermied monkey dressed as a nun. Is any of this real? Absolutely not. But it's oddly compelling. The fish, when poked, does make a wet, burbling sound. The two-headed duck is clearly stitched, and the Viking hand, it definitely twitched. You think, maybe. You step outside and blink in the sudden sunlight. A child runs by holding a turnip like it's treasure. You pass a booth where a toothless man offers to pull your aching molars for free with something that looks suspiciously like pliers. You politely decline. At the edge of the square, you spot a cluster of women whispering. One gestures toward a nearby well and says, "That's where the baker's boy fell in 2 winters ago, head first." They say he came out different. The others nod solemnly. What that means is anyone's guess. Medieval life is dripping with folklore. Every village has its ghosts, saints, fairies, and curses. Rational explanation isn't high on the priority list. And honestly, you kind of like it that way. Before leaving, you're handed a soft, warm pastry. It smells like cinnamon and hope. You ask what it is. Day-old pie, the seller grins. Half price because it only made one priest faint. Perfect. As you wander back toward the village path, arms full of goods you didn't mean to buy, you realize something market day is the closest thing these people have to a weekend. It's a break, a spectacle, a lifeline. And miraculously, you survived it with most of your limbs intact. You're woken by bells, loud, uneven, and far too early. They clang from the squat stone church at the center of the village, echoing off thatched roofs and spooking every nearby chicken into a flurry of feathers. They're not funeral bells, those are slower, more ominous. These are summons. It's Sunday. Time for Mass. You shuffle from your straw mat sore in places you didn't know could be sore and follow the crowd. Everyone's walking. The old, the young, the barefoot, the noble. Though let's be honest, in this village, noble just means someone who owns a second tunic. The church is small and damp and smells faintly of beeswax and mildew. Stone walls drip with condensation. You squeeze in on a long wooden bench that was clearly not designed with comfort in mind. Everyone settles in like passengers about to endure medieval economy class. The priest emerges in vestments that look like they were once glorious, now faded and patched. He begins in Latin, chanting prayers no one but he truly understands. And yet everyone kneels, murmurs, bows in rhythm. Faith here isn't questioned. It's folded into the very fabric of daily life, like flour into dough. You follow along as best you can, whispering when others whisper, crossing yourself when it seems appropriate. A baby screams. A dog wanders in and out, completely unbothered by God or man. Two old men in the back seem to be dozing upright. The priest coughs into his sleeve and keeps going. Halfway through, incense is lit. Thick smoke curls upward, catching the morning light in golden beams. It's beautiful in an itchy throat, watery eye sort of way. The smell is strong frankincense or something like it, and you wonder how many villagers secretly use it as a mosquito repellent. Then comes the sermon. It's long. It's about sin and famine and possibly sheep. It's hard to follow. You catch one line, and so beware the left-handed stranger, for the devil works backwards. That one makes you glance down at your own left hand. You casually hide it under your tunic, just in case. Religion here isn't just belief. It's the calendar, the law, the explanation for every odd thing. Why did your cow stop giving milk? The devil. Why did your neighbor's daughter grow a beard? Also the devil. Why did the moon look weird last night? Someone clearly didn't attend Mass. You leave the church, blinking into the sunlight, and just as you're thinking the day might be duller than usual, you hear shouting in the square. It's a mystery play. Oh, that's right, live entertainment, medieval style. A local guild, probably the Tanners based on the smell, is reenacting a Bible scene right there in front of the church steps. This week's feature, Jonah and the Whale. The whale is a large wooden cart draped in painted cloth. Jonah is a sweaty man in a wig who clearly didn't memorize his lines. Still, the kids love it. A devil character complete with horns and squeaky voice pokes villagers with a stick, and everyone shrieks with delight. Theological nuance minimal, accuracy dubious. But who needs Broadway when your whole neighborhood is the cast and crew? One particularly enthusiastic actor trips over his own sandals and knocks over a fruit stand mid-exorcism. The devil flees. Laughter explodes. You duck out before you're roped into playing the third sheep who saw the angel. Later, while walking near the chapel garden, you're flagged down by a nun. Her name is Sister Magdalene, and she has strong opinions on cabbage. She leads you along neat rows of medicinal herbs, wormwood, fennel, lavender, and explains what each one is used for. You nod like you understand. Sister Magdalene tells you dead serious that too much basil will cloud the humors while rosemary can drive away unclean spirits. You don't question her. Her tone says she once debated Satan and won. Monasteries and churches, you learn, aren't just for praying. They're the closest thing this world has to hospitals, libraries, and universities all rolled into one. If someone's literate, chances are they're in a habit. She even shows you a manuscript, real parchment, hand-copied, covered in tight Latin script and elaborate red initials. It's beautiful. The labor that went into one page could fill a week of your life. You try not to smudge it with your 1300s level hygiene. Then she offers you a spoonful of tonic made from boiled garlic and honey. It tastes like regret and foot. You thank her and lie about how good you feel now. Evening falls. The bells ring again. You learn that this particular village rings them not just for mass, but for weather warnings, deaths, and get this, imminent sheep births. It's basically the medieval push notification. As you return to your hut, you reflect. Church isn't just for worship. It's your one-stop shop for judgment, storytelling, health advice, exorcisms, and aggressive bell ringing. Faith shapes every moment here. It's hope, fear, community, and control all baked into daily life like yeast into a loaf. You lie back on your straw mat, belly still turning from the nun's tonic, and whisper a short prayer of your own. Please, no more church bells tonight. You wake to scratching. Not mice this time, though. Honestly, that wouldn't be shocking, but your own legs. You've officially got fleas, possibly lice, possibly both. You start to wonder what the odds are of dying from scratching yourself too hard. And then you remember in the Middle Ages, that's probably how half of people went out. You hobble outside in search of relief, only to slam your toe into a jagged cobblestone. A sharp pain shoots through your foot. You limp back in and lift your leg. The nail is purple, the toe is swelling, and a voice deep inside whispers, "This is how it starts." Because you're not in 2025 anymore. You're in a world with no ibuprofen, no ER, no telemedicine apps. Here your options are creative. Enter medieval medicine. You're hauled to the local wise woman or cunning woman, depending on who's speaking and how badly she burned the porridge last week. She's got one eye, 3 cats, and an herb pouch that smells like damp socks. Her name might be Agnes, or Maud, or possibly both. Agnes Maud takes one look at your toe, mutters something about humors being unbalanced, and begins grinding garlic with a small pestle. You try to ask questions, but she waves you silent with a spoon coated in honey and crushed snails. Yes, that's going on your toe. You try not to scream. In medieval Europe, the prevailing belief in health was the humoral theory, a lovely little system that blamed every illness on the imbalance of 4 bodily fluids: blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Got a fever, too much yellow bile. Sad. That's black bile. Stubbed your toe. Somehow still a humor thing. Agnes Maud balances your humors by wrapping your foot in garlic paste, muttering a charm in Middle English, and handing you a dried lavender sprig to hold in your mouth. Not chew, just hold. Apparently it draws out the bad spirits through your tongue. Historians still argue whether these wise women were genuine healers or accidental poisoners. Honestly, probably both. You limp away slightly smellier, slightly stickier, and no less swollen. Next stop, the barber surgeon. He's not a doctor. He's also not just a barber. He's a man with sharp tools and no concept of sterilization. but a remarkable confidence in his own methods. His shop is signaled by a striped pole outside, red for blood, white for bandages, and he welcomes you with a grin and a, "Let's see that toe, my friend." He prods it. You yelp. He nods solemnly. "Leeches," he says. You want to ask if that's necessary. But before the thought fully forms, a jar is opened. In slither several small, glistening, wriggling creatures that definitely didn't sign any medical liability forms. You are seated, braced, and introduced to Teresa, a particularly eager leech who latches onto your toe like she's late for lunch. You close your eyes and try not to cry. Meanwhile, the barber explains how bloodletting balances the humors, a process that's been passed down since ancient Greece. It's based on Galenic principles which he doesn't explain and probably doesn't fully understand. You don't either. You just want Teresa off your foot. "Now we'll cauterize it to seal the imbalance," he says cheerfully. You panic. Thankfully, he gets distracted by a loud commotion outside, a neighbor yelling that someone's goat has developed a suspicious rash and lets you hobble off before the hot iron comes out. You find refuge in the apothecary's shop. It's dark, crowded, and smells of cloves, vinegar, and something like burnt hair. Jars line the walls, powders, dried herbs, chunks of mysterious origin. The apothecary greets you without looking up, hands you a satchel, and mutters, "Dried frog skin. Boil it. Apply with bandage made from a virgin's undergarment." Next, you do not ask follow-up questions. Strangest of all, you overhear something in the shop about trepanation, drilling a hole in the skull to release spirits or pressure. And not just for head injuries, sometimes for melancholy, or migraines, or boredom. You're not sure. You back out of the shop before your toe becomes a cranial case study. Now here's a quirky tidbit. Not all treatments were gross. Some were surprisingly relaxing, like herbal baths infused with rose petals, chamomile, or thyme. Monastic infirmaries sometimes had warm rooms, pleasant music, and even bed rest. Not exactly a spa, but not bad for a world that thinks leeches are a lifestyle. Still at the heart of it, medicine in the Middle Ages is a blend of logic, superstition, and hopeful guessing. And if that doesn't work, prayer. Lots and lots of prayer. Your day ends with a poultice on your foot, a vague fear that Teresa laid eggs and a head full of odd-smelling herbs. The pain hasn't gone, but somehow you've started to believe it might get better. Or maybe the frog skin is mildly hallucinogenic. Either way, as you drift to sleep in the smoky glow of the hearth, you marvel at the sheer determination of medieval people to keep each other alive with almost no tools, little science, and a whole lot of garlic. And you whisper to yourself, "Next time I'll wear boots." A bell tolls, low and slow at first, then faster, echoing across the fields through narrow village lanes and right into your probably infected eardrums. The air shifts. People begin to stir. You were hoping to sleep off your toad-foot garlic nightmare, but the clanging isn't optional. It's Sunday, and that means church. Your host, who still hasn't offered their name because, well, names aren't that important. When everyone's named John or Marjorie, tosses you a roughly woven cloak and motions to the door. "You'll want to hurry," they mutter. "Last one in rings the bell next week." You don't yet know what that entails, but you definitely don't want to find out. Outside, the whole village is moving in one direction, like livestock herded by a higher power, quite literally. You join the stream, walking through muddy lanes and past half-collapsed fences until you arrive at a squat stone building with a crooked wooden steeple. It's more fortress than sanctuary. Inside, it's dark. Candles flicker. The smell of beeswax and incense hovers somewhere between soothing and suffocating. You're hit with a sudden wave of quiet dread, like you've just stepped into a sacred escape room and lost the clues. You slide into a hard wooden pew. No cushions, no music. Just silence and the faint sound of someone clearing their throat ominously behind you. The priest enters robed and solemn eyes scanning the congregation like a medieval security camera. He launches into the Latin Mass, and you realize to your horror you understand none of it. None. Not a word. And neither does anyone else, really. Historians still argue whether most villagers truly absorbed the spiritual messages of the church, or just nodded along to avoid being labeled heretics. Considering the stakes included flogging or fire, it's no surprise that nodding was popular. You try to blend in. You kneel when they kneel. You rise when they rise. You cross yourself in what you hope is the right direction. But let's be honest, you're a tourist and everyone knows it. An old woman gives you a suspicious glance when you sneeze. You feel your mortal soul being weighed in real time. Then the sermon begins, this time, thankfully, in the local vernacular. It's a fiery one full of reminders that sin lurks in idle hands. Dancing is basically devil rehearsal, and women should really stop looking so pleased with themselves. You steal a glance around. Nobody looks pleased at all. But it's not all hellfire and brimstone. There are moments of softness. A hymn sung quietly. A child giggling and being shushed. A flicker of candlelight catching on stained glass, casting blue and red across a boy's cheek like the sky weeping. Still, as the Mass drags on, your mind wanders. You remember last night's folk healer and her whispered spells. She seemed devout enough, yet her charms danced on the edge of blasphemy. In fact, many medieval people balanced this odd line Christian by faith, superstitious by survival. They'd attend Mass on Sunday and bury a dead mouse in their garden to heal warts on Monday. No contradiction, just practicality. You also notice who sits where. Nobles and landowners near the front. Everyone else in the back or standing if the pews are full. Even God's house has a seating chart. And here's a quirky tidbit. The church isn't just spiritual, it's social. It's where marriages are announced, disputes settled, fines levied, and rumors whispered under breath. One guy near you definitely just warned another about someone's demon chicken. You file that one away. After what feels like 3 lifetimes, the Mass ends. But don't get too comfortable, you're not leaving yet. It's time for confession. Yes, even you. You line up with the others. Heart thudding, trying to remember whether sarcasm counts as a sin. It does. Or whether lying about your actual identity to avoid execution is frowned upon, unclear. You reach the priest, mumble something about impure thoughts and clumsy feet, and he nods, then instructs you to recite a few prayers you also don't know. You make it up as you go, whispering something about forgiving the goat and hoping God is in a generous mood. As the crowd spills back into daylight, there's a sense of collective exhale, like everyone just barely made it through final exams. Children run ahead, women gather near the well, and men trade gossip under the pretense of discussing the harvest. You feel lighter, probably not forgiven, but maybe tolerated. You wander behind the church and discover a strange addition, a chantry chapel paid for by a wealthy donor to guarantee endless prayers for his soul. Basically, a celestial subscription plan. You marvel at the idea, someone spending a fortune to make sure monks keep mentioning their name after death. Eternal PR management. Nearby, a stone slab marks the grave of a knight, his effigy clutching a sword in one hand and a cross in the other. You touch the weather-worn carving. and wonder what he'd think of you mismatched boots, flea-bitten ankles, and absolutely zero clue what you're doing. Probably think you were a fool, but then again, so was everyone here in a way. Praying against famine, hoping for rain, begging for a heaven they couldn't see in a world that often felt like hell. And yet they showed up every Sunday. Because even if the words were foreign and the sermons harsh, this was something. A rhythm, a ritual, a thread connecting the chaos of mud and leeches to the promise of something higher. As you shuffle back to the village, blinking into the sun, you hear the bell ring once more, this time softer, like it's calling from somewhere far away. You survived your first medieval mass. Your soul may still be in question, but your social standing slightly improved. The sun's risen higher now, and so has the noise market day has arrived. No sleeping and no brunch menus, and definitely no oat milk lattes. Just mud elbows and shouting. You follow the growing clamor to the village green, where stalls are already crowding the square like mushrooms after rain. First thing you notice, the smells. Sweet roasted chestnuts mixing with boiling cabbage and something unmistakably animal. That's a market for you, part feast, part barnyard, part medieval game show where your prize might be tapeworm. Vendors bark out their wares. Fresh eel, wool cloaks, no lice. Honey from a blessed hive. The last one seems ambitious. You pass a man hawking bootleg relics, including a toenail of St. Cuthbert. He swears on his mother's unmarked grave that it's authentic. Historians still argue whether the peasant class genuinely believed in the authenticity of such items, or if it was all part of the show, a wink and a prayer. Your host gives you a small pouch of coins, well, more like coin. 1. A battered bent farthing, which buys roughly the value of a damp handshake. But you're thrilled. You have currency. You are now participating in the medieval economy. Congratulations. With exaggerated confidence, you approach a cart selling apples. You pick the least wormy one and hand over your coin. The vendor squints, bites the farthing, shrugs, and nods. Victory. You're almost drunk on the power of your first transaction until you're nearly trampled by a man leading 2 unruly pigs on a rope. This is a livestock market too, after all. A piglet escapes and scampers under a cart, sending a child squealing after it. Nobody blinks. Just another Tuesday. In one corner, you see the village reeve, basically a local manager arguing over taxes with a baker who's clearly not thrilled about the latest flour tithe. Tithes, by the way, are 1/10 of everything you produce, paid to the church. Even your bees, oh honey. And yes, if you've got nothing to give, you're expected to donate labor. Community Service Medieval Edition. You wander deeper into the chaos and notice the market isn't just for goods. It's social media without the screen. News spreads from mouth to ear to another mouth because written language is for the elite and gossip is faster than a fox in a chicken coop. Oh, that's the widow Joan. She brews the strongest mead and talks to crows, someone whispers beside you. And that's old Oswin. He once claimed a mole foretold the weather. Swore it blinked bad harvest. You start to realize something. This is more than shopping. It's theater. Every barter, every argument, every odd charm sold in a pouch of dried herbs. It's performance. There's a storyteller juggling near the well, reciting an Arthurian tale with dramatic flair. A lute player strums next to him, hoping someone will toss a coin, or at least not yell at him to shut up. You spot a woman selling ribbons dyed in rare hues, saffron yellow, indigo blue. She tells you the blue was made from woad plants, stomped and soaked and fermented into a paste that smells like death and looks like magic. You ask for one. She eyes your flea-bitten cloak, gives a knowing smile, and offers a scrap for free. You look like you need some cheer, she says. Fringe fact: some market stalls were actually operated by traveling con artists. One popular scam involved fake medical treatments like powdered unicorn horn, actually ground antler, or charms guaranteed to ward off plague, usually just herbs sewn into cloth. People bought them anyway, because even a placebo is better than helplessness. Just as you're considering whether to invest in a suspiciously moist cough stone, there's a sudden commotion near the far edge of the square. A man is shouting about the Crown's justice. Everyone turns. Two officials arrive with a young thief, barefoot, grimy, and clutching a stolen meat pie. The vendor is livid. The officials murmur. Then one grabs the thief's ear and announces the punishment stalks. The crowd drags him toward the village center where a wooden pillory awaits. He's locked in neck and wrists, trapped between beams. A child throws a radish at his face. You flinch. The stocks weren't just about pain, they were public humiliation. Medieval justice was a group project. The punishment was the spectacle. And yes, sometimes people were left in them overnight. Rain rats and all. Could have been worse, someone next to you mutters. Last time they cut off a finger, you swallow. You make your way back toward the quieter edge of the market, past a stall selling wax tablets for writing, past an old man with a trained ferret on his shoulder. You don't ask, and past a group of women loudly bartering for dye plants. One of them is dyeing linen with madder root, turns it a deep red. For my daughter's wedding, she explains when you linger. We can't afford wine, but at least she'll blush. Then she laughs and slaps your arm, and you feel the briefest sense of belonging. You sit on a stone wall and take in the scene. The smells, the chaos, the mess. This is the pulse of the village. It's where everyone collides, lord and laborer, peddler and priest, charlatan and child. Everyone eats, everyone barters, everyone gossips. It's a lifeline. And yes, the risk of being pickpocketed, stoned, or contracting plague is real, but so is the hope, a better trade, a new friend, a story that makes your afternoon less bleak. As the sun dips and shadows stretch across the stalls, the market begins to thin. Some pack up. Some linger hoping for a last sale. A group of drunk weavers start singing a song about trousers. You don't understand the lyrics, but the tune is oddly catchy. You hum it as you wander back toward your host's cottage apple core, in hand ribbon, in pocket mind, spinning from 1,000 smells and sounds. You've made it through market day. You weren't robbed, pilloried, or scammed, at least not obviously. You might even go back next week, morning again, and today you're off on a longer adventure, leaving the safety of the village behind. It's time to walk the medieval road. You might think of it as the original highway system, but let's just say, Google Maps won't save you here. You set out with a small pack, bread crust, hard cheese, a water skin, and a warning from your host not to talk to monks who walk too fast. That seems oddly specific, but you nod. The path starts off promising a dirt trail framed by hedgerows, the sun dappling through the leaves. It smells like dew and damp wool, because your cloak still hasn't dried since yesterday's rain. You pass a boy herding geese with a stick and a song, and a woman collecting herbs who mutters something about wormwood for the dreams. Fringe wisdom says wormwood cures nightmares and possibly unwanted husbands, but soon the road gets less charming. Cart ruts have turned into small trenches, and the mud is aggressive, ankle-deep hungry, and somehow cold even at noon. You try to walk on the edges, balancing like a tightrope artist with zero coordination. And guess what? You slip anyway. Medieval Road. 1. Still, you press on. Travelers were common here, traders, pilgrims, messengers, and thieves. Historians still argue whether certain paths were safer under church protection, or if bandits just liked robbing pious people more. You're keeping one eye on the bushes either way. Then you spotted a roadside shrine. A stone cross draped with dried flowers and wax streaked from old candles. Someone's left a small loaf. These shrines were like spiritual pit stops. Pray, leave an offering. Hope not to die today. You whisper something about not dying and move on. Up ahead, a man limps along with a staff cloaked in dust. A pilgrim judging by the scallop shell pinned to his hat. He's returning from Santiago de Compostela, or says he is. You walk together for a while. He shares a bit of ale from a leather bottle and tells you about a church where a chicken came back to life after someone was falsely accused. You want to laugh, but his face is dead serious. Pilgrimages weren't always religious devotion. Sometimes they were penance punishment, or just an excuse to leave a bad marriage. Still, they gave people a reason to travel something larger than themselves. And they came with souvenirs, badges, tokens, or in rare cases, supposedly blessed toenails. Soon your path forks. One way leads toward a town, the other toward a cluster of woods. You take the town route because you're not ready to meet whatever eats people in medieval forests. Spoiler, it's often people. The road becomes busier near the outskirts. You pass a merchant with 2 mules carrying barrels of salt. Salt is basically medieval gold. It preserves food flavors, porridge, and might even be used to pay taxes. You nod politely as he passes. He grunts back, which is probably friendly. You also pass a priest walking barefoot, singing under his breath in Latin. He doesn't acknowledge you, just keeps chanting. Your host's monk warning echoes in your head. You slow your pace, let him disappear around the bend. Probably nothing. Probably. Closer to the town, you come upon a toll gate. A small post with a bored-looking man collecting road fees. He waves you through when he sees your muddy cloak and complete lack of a horse. Apparently, you don't qualify for taxation. Congratulations. You finally reach the edge of the town. A low wooden palisade surrounds it with a watchman scratching his beard. He eyes you, sniffs the air, then shrugs and lets you through. Inside is a different world. Tighter buildings, noisier streets, and the distinct scent of too many people in too small a space. You see shops with real signs, painted images of shoes, candles, bread. You can't read, but you can guess. The cobbles are uneven, but at least they aren't mud. Much. A woman is selling ribbons again, finer this time. A boy chases rats near the fishmonger. A pair of apprentices in matching tunics carry a beam twice their size and argue over lunch. You pass a narrow alleyway and see someone relieving himself into a drain. Sanitation loosely defined. You enter a taverna-style inn mostly because your legs feel like pudding. The interior is dark, warm, and smells like ale smoke and ambition. You sit. Someone plops a bowl in front of you, pottage again. You don't ask what's in it. You eat. It's better not to know. Across from you, 2 women argue in dialects you barely follow. Something about goats and embroidery. You sip thin ale and eavesdrop. Then out of the gloom, a man with an actual lute starts playing. He's not good, but he's trying. The tavern quiets a little. someone taps a beat on the table, and you realize this is it. The pulse of medieval movement, not just walking, but migration trade, pilgrimage, escape. Fringe fact: medieval people didn't travel often, but when they did, they told stories for the rest of their lives, and often exaggerated them beyond recognition. "I fought a wolf" might really mean "I heard one and ran." You leave the inn just before dusk. The sky is bruised purple, and the wind carries the smell of smoke and cooked onions. You decide to stay overnight in town your host said you could, and you're honestly not eager to brave the road again in the dark. You find a place to sleep in a church nave. Common practice. As long as you don't snore louder than the monks, you're fine. Lying there on a straw mat, listening to the creaks of ancient timber and a rat gnawing somewhere near your head, you think about the road. It was muddy, risky, strange, and filled with stories. And tomorrow you'll have to walk it again. You wake before dawn to the sound of someone sweeping the stone floor with a bundle of sticks. It's a monk humming a single low note, like he's tuning the entire planet. Your back aches. Your nose is stuffed from the church dust, and your mouth tastes like regret. Welcome to another glorious day in medieval Europe. Today's mission: a proper town market day. Finally, something lively. This is where medieval life turns technicolor, noisy, chaotic, absurd, and surprisingly fun if you dodge the pickpockets. The sun rises behind thick thatch roofs and crooked timber-framed buildings. A bell rings, calling people toward the main square. You follow the stream of early risers, fishwives balancing baskets, butchers with blood still on their aprons, sleepy kids herding goats like it's the most boring job on earth. The market square is already buzzing by the time you arrive. Stalls form crooked rows covered in fabric canopies or old sailcloth. Merchants shout prices, haggle mid-sentence, or just yell for the drama. The smells hit you all at once: yeast, garlic, dung, sweet cider, something that might be eels. A man is selling dyed wool in tiny bundles. Another hawks ribbons, brass pins, and decorative knives that are 60% knife and 40% status symbol. A baker cuts thick wedges from a rye loaf, while his wife handles the coin box. You linger staring at the pastries shaped like birds. He gives you a half smile and a sample that tastes like spiced heaven. You almost weep. Nearby, a quack doctor is pitching a miracle cure made from boiled leeches and rosewater. "Guaranteed to balance your humors," he shouts. You watch as he sells 2 bottles to the same guy who just sneezed on a chicken. Historians still argue whether these market day physicians believed in their own concoctions or were just very theatrical frauds. Either way, they had followers. You spot a scriber with a portable desk and inkpot writing letters for illiterate townsfolk in exchange for bread, eggs, or gossip. A woman dictates a note to her son now apprenticing in another city. "Tell him not to forget his soul," she says. The scribe nods solemnly, then dips his pen. Further down, a puppet show's already started. Children shriek with laughter as a crude dragon puppet eats a wooden knight, then burps. You're impressed by the craftsmanship. The puppeteer's arms must be made of rope and ambition. The noise gets louder as traveling entertainers arrive, jugglers, a one-eyed fiddlers, even a fire breather who almost sets a cart on fire before being politely asked to leave. You watch a juggler toss knives in front of a tense crowd. Then he drops one, slices his thumb, and laughs it off like a champ. The crowd loves it. But here's the kicker beneath all the chaos. The market is a social engine. People swap news, argue politics, and make marriages. A local priest walks through holding a scroll and a tired expression. He's registering disputes for next week's court session. Someone's pig trampled a neighbor's barley again. Classic. A noble steward arrives in fine boots flanked by 2 men-at-arms. He buys cheese, a small carpet, and 7 jars of honey, then leaves like he's just conquered France. You can tell who's wealthy by how little they carry. The richer they are, the more other people do the lugging. You overhear 2 old women debating the price of saffron. One insists her cousin smuggled it from the Levant. The other says her cousin is the Levant. You don't interrupt. You also pass a friar with a donkey cart full of bones. Not relics, just bones. He claims they're good luck. People throw coins at him anyway. A side alley leads to an animal market. Goats bleat, hens scatter. And a man tries to barter his rooster for a set of boots. The bootmaker laughs. The man shrugs. The rooster seems unfazed. As the sun climbs, heat and noise blur together. Someone is playing a hurdy-gurdy. A child has gotten tangled in a bolt of linen. A stray dog steals a pie. You duck into a quieter corner behind the spice seller's tent. The smell here is otherworldly nutmeg, cinnamon, cardamom, and pepper so strong it stings your nose. These were luxury items, sometimes worth their weight in silver. One merchant tells you a single clove could pay for a chicken. You don't know if that's true, but you do know your cloak now smells delicious. Fringe tidbit: some towns had sumptuary laws that dictated who could wear certain colors or fabrics depending on class. So if you find yourself eyeing that deep purple tunic, just know you might be fined for looking too fabulous. Eventually, the crowds begin to thin. Afternoon shadows stretch across the stalls, and traders begin packing up their wares. A few linger hoping for last-minute sales. You sit near the well watching pigeons bathe, and a boy try to trade mud for jam. It doesn't work. By now, your feet are sore, your ears are ringing, and your pouch is emptier than when you started. But you've seen the medieval market in full motion, less like a modern store, more like a traveling circus mixed with a town council and a minor emergency. And yes, you bought something. A tiny wooden whistle shaped like a duck. You'll probably never use it, but it was cheap, and the seller had a kind smile. That's enough. As you leave the square, bells ring again from the church tower. Time resets. The rhythm of medieval life continues, tied to Bell's Trade gossip and the next market day. And tonight you've got a feather mattress waiting well more like straw and burlap. But after today, it'll feel like luxury. The wind is cooler now as you walk away from the square dusk, already beginning to bruise the edges of the sky. The town is quieter, but not asleep, not yet. You pass homes where candles flicker through oiled parchment windows, and voices murmur behind shutters. Laughter leaks out of an alehouse door as it creaks open and then shuts again, swallowing the sound. Tonight, you're finally joining the local peasants for a communal feast. It's not every day a stranger is invited, so you take your chance, stomach grumbling, curiosity piqued. You're led down a muddy path to a timber-framed longhouse shared by several families. Inside, it's smoky, cramped, and alive. There are no individual dining chairs or private servings here, just benches around trestle tables, heavy wooden bowls, and the unmistakable smell of onions, barley, and sweat. Kids run underfoot, giggling as they swipe bits of bread. A piglet noses around near the hearth, narrowly avoiding being stepped on. No one's announcing the meal with any grand speech. Food just happens. A wide cauldron of pottage is ladled into shared bowls. You recognize carrots, grains, leeks, and something that may or may not be rabbit. Bread is broken into chunks and passed around like a holy relic. You take yours and nod politely, ignoring the slight mildew on the crust. One woman hands you a small cup of ale so weak it tastes like malty water, but it's safer than the river. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Most medieval diets were low in meat and heavy on grains and root vegetables, especially among peasants. Meat days were rare and precious. Today must be special because someone brings in a roasted goose and the room erupts in cheers. You can't help but grin. This isn't fine dining, but it is real, honest, and you're starved. The conversation around you bounces between who's marrying whom. The latest village scandal, someone was caught singing pagan songs to their cow, and complaints about the manor steward's new taxes. A toothless elder mutters that in her day, people paid with eggs, not coin, and it was far more dignified. Nobody argues. Then comes the music. Someone pulls out a battered lute, and the sound is immediately off-key but charming. A teen boy bangs on an overturned bucket like it's a drum. A girl claps along. Soon the whole room pulses with rhythm. You're coaxed into joining a simple circle dance. The steps are easy, 2 left, 1 right clap turn. It's not about skill, it's about sharing the moment. You find yourself laughing offbeat, breathless. Fringe, tidbit. Some peasant dances were banned by local clergy for being too lively with one bishop in the 13th century, declaring them a gateway to sin via stomping. Historians still argue whether these crackdowns were about morality or just grumpy monks who hated fun. At one point, a man with a thick beard and wine-stained tunic leans over and asks you, with zero irony, "Ever danced with the devil in a field of beans?" You blink. He winks. No one explains. You decide not to ask. The feast slows. Someone snores in a corner. The fire dies down to embers. You help carry the empty bowls to the kitchen hearth, where they'll be scrubbed tomorrow with sand and ash. A child offers you half a plum she's been saving. You accept it with a solemn nod, like it's a royal offering. As people prepare to sleep in haphazard piles of straw mats and shared blankets, you step outside. The stars are sharp tonight. No street lamps, no glow from skyscrapers. Just the Milky Way like spilled salt across the sky. You walk a bit. It's peaceful. Then you hear a distant rhythmic chanting. Curious, and because you're clearly bad at choosing safe options, you follow the sound. Through the woods and across a field, you come upon a ring of villagers, their faces lit by torchlight. They're singing in Latin or something that sounds like it. In the center, a maypole wrapped in ribbons, even though it's not May. A goat stands off to one side, bored. No one seems concerned about your presence. This isn't a sinister cult, more like a spontaneous seasonal festival with slightly pagan vibes. These kinds of rural rituals persisted in small pockets despite official church disapproval. Some were tied to harvests, moon phases, or local saints. Some were just excuses to party. Historians still argue whether these festivals were echoes of pre-Christian rites or creative reinterpretations within Christian frameworks. What's certain is that they existed quietly, joyfully, just off the map. Someone hands you a flower crown and nudges you into the dance. You go. Why not? The air smells like bonfire and apple mash. For a moment you forget the fleas, the cold, the threat of typhoid, the lack of deodorant. You're just part of it. Eventually, the group disperses. You make your way back to the longhouse where a corner of straw awaits you. Someone snores. Someone mumbles in their sleep. A dog curls up at your feet. You lie back, cloak wrapped around your shoulders, and stare at the rafters. There's no mattress, no pillow, no toothbrush waiting. But there's warmth. Laughter lingering in the wood smoke, and the faintest rhythm still humming in your chest. Maybe, just maybe, you'd survive here. If you had good boots and a strong liver, you wake up aching. Every joint feels like it was replaced with medieval wood. But as the sun spills through the cottage shutters, and a rooster screams in the distance like a tiny, angry dragon, you know this is your final day in the Middle Ages. And tonight you'll try to clean yourself. You've spent days absorbing the grime, the smells, the bugs, and the medieval sweat layer so thick it might be legally considered armor. So when someone mentions a public bathhouse, your ears perk up like a noble's hound at the dinner bell. But first, survival prep. You're handed a linen wrap, a small rag, and what appears to be a cracked bowl of lavender mush. Soap, sort of. It's a lye-based concoction with herbs, ash, and the haunting memory of goat fat. You sniff it. Bad decision. On the way to the bathhouse, your host warns, don't drop anything. Don't stare. Don't flirt. Don't inhale too hard. Comforting. The building is tucked behind the baker's quarter-low ceiling, warm stone walls. A carved wooden sign of a steaming tub and two figures suspiciously close together. You duck inside. Welcome to the stews, not food, but bathhouses. These were common in towns from London to Prague, usually run by guilds sometimes. Let's say moonlighting as brothels. But historians still argue whether they were truly centers of vice or more like medieval spas with an occasional scandal. Inside, the air hits you like a moist quilt. Steam curls around beams, and dim candlelight casts long shadows through the haze. A wooden counter separates you from a stern woman with arms like bread ovens and a faint smile. She takes your rag and points toward the changing stalls. No privacy, just curtains and a lot of awkward eye contact. You wrap the linen around your waist like a contestant on a very old game show and step through to the main bath. It's crowded. There are at least 10 people soaking in a giant wooden tub, looking relaxed and slightly pink. A few kids splash water. Someone's humming. Someone else is furiously scrubbing their armpits with what appears to be moss. You ease yourself in. It's hot, shockingly so, and your body doesn't know whether to relax or panic. But after a moment, the warmth seeps into your bones like forgiveness. You sink in deeper steam, curling around your face. Someone offers you a shared pumice stone. You hesitate. Take it. Rub your foot like a medieval hobbit. It works. To your right, two older men discuss wheat prices in Latinized English. To your left, a woman with 4 braids is debating church relics with a bearded monk. The monk has tattoos. You pretend this is normal. And here comes the quirky detail: many bathhouses served food and wine. Some even had musicians. It wasn't just about cleanliness, it was social. Like a hot tub party, but with more prayer and fewer swimsuits. A boy walks through with a tray of warm wine cloves floating like little boats. You take a sip. It burns, but in a good way. You've gone from peasant grime to pseudo-noble relaxation in under 30 minutes. Then someone pulls out a brush and offers to scrub your back. This is where the tension lives. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were centers of hygiene or hotbeds of sin. Church records condemned them, but town records kept funding them. One bishop described them as temptations of the flesh, and the knees, whatever that means. You stay polite. Say thank you. Decline the back scrub. You're modern enough to worry about germs and medieval enough to wonder if this is a test. Eventually, you rinse off using a small scoop of cool water, stepping aside to dry on a cracked stone bench. The linen wrap is now soaked, your skin flushed, and your spirit oddly lifted. You feel lighter. Back in the changing area, you realize your clothes, still damp and reeking of hay, somehow feel even worse now. You consider staying wrapped in the bath sheet forever. You walk back through the dusk. The sky is streaked with violet and copper stars already twinkling above the fields. You pass a woman lighting a lantern outside her cottage, children giggling in a game of catch the devil, and an old man playing a reed flute from his window. The world softens, and as you near the edge of the village, you pause. Because this single day of medieval life from sunup to nightfall feels like more than history. It's sweat, laughter, filth, fear, and odd joy wrapped together like a patchwork cloak. You didn't just learn how they lived. You lived it. Briefly, brutally, beautifully. You settle back into the straw under a thick wool blanket, listening to the wolves in the distant hills and the creak of the roof above. You're still itchy. Your back still hurts. But somehow that bath felt like a gift, like an ending. Because tomorrow, you go home. Wind down 300 words. Now let your thoughts drift like candle smoke rising from a chapel's altar, like mist curling over the medieval moors. You're no longer scrubbing grime or ducking from chamber pots hurled from windows. No more sore hands or anxious bows. The aches in your body soften as the night wraps around you like wool spun by kind hands. The stars outside are older than cathedrals. The wind rustling through thatched roofs carries no urgency now. All the noise, the hammering of blacksmiths, the call of market hawkers, the buzzing fear of plague and hunger has quieted into memory. Let it settle. Breathe in like the scent of warm bread from a peasant hearth. Breathe out like smoke from a reed fire winding into the sky. Each breath pulls you farther from the fields and deeper into rest. It's okay now. You've walked the roads of the past. You've seen what they saw, tasted what they tasted. Even if that was suspicious meat pie and sour ale. You've dodged death by dung, flirted badly in a hayfield, and bathed in a tub full of strangers. You made it, and maybe, just maybe, you've come to understand that the past isn't distant. It's just a few layers of dust away. People then laughed, feared, loved, hoped, just like you do now. So close your eyes. The medieval world fades. Your muscles relax. Your breath slows. Time for now is yours again. End of script. Sweet dreams.